Remember when they put that girl band together and it was a reality TV show? It's called Danity, Kane.
Heard of it?
Yeah. It was a million years ago.
Or those early years, right?
They say you'd rather be lucky than smart. I don't think I was smart enough or knowledgeable enough to be scared. You don't know what you don't know, right? Two things I always tell people that are younger than me to ask for advice. One, have a partner that has the skills that you don't have and trust in that person. You either come from some money and you kind of use that to sort of build your company, or you have to go raise capital on the street, which is doable, but not easy, right?
Awesome. Episode 74 of Stay Classy Podcast. Here we go. We're doing something a little different today. We're sitting here at Firehouse Pacific Beach with Matt Spencer, the owner. Not only is he the owner of Firehouse, but he's also actually the owner of SDCM, which owns Firehouse, Kettner Exchange, Waverly, a number of other businesses as well that we'll be talking about, and most recently the Whaling Bar.
Yep.
Yeah. So the first question, though, before we get into all the background stuff, is I just wanted to ask you, you talked about, before we started recording, about the background you had in nightlife. And I'm just curious, in the course of working in nightlife and then now owning a business that operates in nightlife, like if you have any like crazy stories, anecdotes that you can lead us off with, any performer stories, maybe a DJ story, maybe a time things got out of hand, anything along those lines.
Yeah, we had one of our first restaurant nightclub that we owned, which kind of put us in the restaurant direction. We did a lot of live acts. We did, do you remember, I'm showing my age a little bit here, but do you remember when they put that girl band together and it was a reality TV show? It's called Danity, Kane.
Heard of it?
Yeah. It was a million years ago, but at the time it was the hot thing. And I went into the green room. I was like, hey, ladies, you guys gotta come out. Your performance is starting now. Pardon me. And the girl walked right out and started making out with me. I was like, whoa, I have a girlfriend. Hold on, chill. Yeah, just out of nowhere. I was like, I don't know what they're doing in the green room, but yeah, so that just came to mind. But yeah, those are crazy days.
She was a member of the band, or just some random? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your older viewers will be like, Danity Kane, I remember them.
Danity Kane. All right. Yeah. Shout out Danity Kane. Do you remember who the girl was, or?
I think it was the blonde one.
The blonde one.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a reality TV show. Yeah.
But
I'm gonna get in trouble for that no matter what.
Yeah, is that a common occurrence? People like trying to make out with you at clubs, or?
No. I would say that those were the early. You wanted a crazy story. That was kind of my pre-restaurant life. When I was doing more sort of nightclub promotions and that kind of thing. So yeah, there was some stuff like that for sure.
Were there connections that you made at the time that sort of segued into the entrepreneurship and the business stuff, or like how did that come about to where you're working like the regular job stuff, and then in 2007, correct? You said tail end of 2007 was when you started SDCM. So what was the transition like between the years where you worked in the promotion industry and then coming up to 2007?
It's a good question. I'm born and raised San Diego, got a job as a busboy when I was about 16. So I was in restaurants forever. I did every job all the way up to general manager. And I kind of got out of restaurants for a minute and started doing insurance with my mom. Super boring, but I figured, that's my real job. Did that, but on the side, when I was out of the restaurant business, I started to promote this particular bar, restaurant, nightclub on one night, and it was really just for fun. My day job was kind of insurance, and on this weekend night, I would book a DJ and kind of host this one party, this one night at this place. It was called Oli Madrid, a long time ago, and that kind of grew into 2 nights, into 3 nights, and that kind of got me in a direction which I would have never assumed, but it was like basically a club promoter, right? And nobody wants to brag they're a club promoter. That's right up there with like used car salesman. Excuse me. But
I like club promoters better, for the record.
Exactly. So yeah, I kind of slowly transitioned out of my mom's insurance company and started doing this promotion thing, and frankly started making quite a bit more money, really kind of saving that. And I did that for probably, off the top of my head, 6-7 years, and really kind of stacked that money. And at some point was like, wait a minute, why am I making money for these nightclubs essentially? And why don't I, cut the middleman out and try to buy a nightclub? And that was a really scary transition because I don't come from a ton of money. So I thought, well, how do you buy a restaurant nightclub? And I'll talk later, but I had a mentor too that helped me, and we ended up buying a restaurant nightclub called Aubergine. We had it for about 4.5 years. And that was kind of, I took club promotions into the ownership of the nightclub. And frankly, I didn't even know what a P&L was. I didn't know what a balance sheet was, but we were able to bring a lot of money through that door. And it was really successful for about 4.5 years. And then we sold it to the Flux guys. And then, it goes on from there.
Was that like a scary or intimidating transition when, you're working in the promotion industry and then starting, what was it called? Aubergine. Starting that, was that like a very challenging time, like those early stages in terms of like, okay, like, as you said, you didn't have a lot of background in entrepreneurship and business. Like what was that what were those early years, right?
No, again, that's so funny. They say you'd rather be lucky than smart. I don't think I was smart enough or knowledgeable enough to be scared. Meaning I had so much success in the nightclub promotion industry that when I went into the nightclub, I'm like, this is easy peasy. I got this. It's almost like you don't know what you don't know, right? I didn't know, if we couldn't make rent or if the P&L were bad or, I just didn't understand that. I knew I could fill it up full of people 2 or 3 times a week and make money. And through that experience, slowly I learned the actual back end, right? The non-sexy part of, what's your food cost, what's your labor, what's your pour cost. And it's almost like the more you learn, then the more nervous you start to get. So I always tell people like, you want to be a master of something, but not like the master, because you'll talk yourself out of stuff sometimes. Sure. So it's just that balance of passion and knowledge.
Yeah. So almost 17 years now with SDCM, and at the beginning, I'm sure it was challenging, but over the course of time, obviously it turned into a success. Obviously we're sitting here talking today, it's a success. And what about what you did or something that happened to you early on at the beginning, like helped you become successful? Like what was the biggest like sort of turning point where this went from, okay, like we'll see if this works to, okay, this is a brilliant success?
It wasn't financial. I would, give a shout out. I would say to anyone, find a mentor. 2 things I always tell people that are younger than me to ask for advice. 1, have a partner that has the skills that you don't have and trust in that person. And then you bring everything to the table, right? One guy brings black to the table. The other guy brings white to the table, whatever that is to you. That's number 1, important. And then number 2 is have a mentor, have an older, man or woman who has kind of been in your industry that when you run into a problem, you can go to. And for me, that was David Cohen. He owns the Kane Restaurant Group, arguably the largest restaurateur in San Diego. Yeah. And so he's really been there with me since the beginning. I want to say in that 2007 time, he kind of found me as a promoter. He had someone reach out to me, said, hey, would you help me out? He had one venue that was more nightclub than restaurant. That's really not his thing, is nightclubs. And I kind of went in and I met with them after and said, listen, I think you should do X, Y, and Z. However, I'm not your guy. I'm not interested in working here and running this. And I think he was a little surprised, that I kind of turned him down. And again, at the time, I didn't realize how big of a deal he was. But we stayed in touch. And over time, when the option came to purchase this restaurant nightclub, aubergine means eggplant in French, by the way, pronounced aubergine, but anyway, he really helped walk us through that sale, right? How do you buy something? How do you call up SDG&E and say, no, I'm not putting a $10,000 deposit down. I'm going to do, he walked us through the nuts and bolts of how to do that. And very silent investor partner. He didn't want anyone to know that he invested a little bit in aubergine. And he's been basically my mentor and to some degree, my business partner over all these years. So I think for me, that was a humongous turning point to have such a wealth of knowledge to go to.
Yeah. And so finding a mentor, finding somebody who's influential, I feel like not just in entrepreneurship, right, but in life, right?
Correct.
Like in different areas, whether it's, we interview the pro athletes, we interview fitness trainers, we interview celebrities, but it's all about finding that top level, mentor, somebody who's the top performer in the field, who's willing to make that connection with you, who's willing to walk you through those early stages. But for you personally, as time evolved, as you kind of came into your own, as it started to become a success, what was the key to sustaining that success over a long period of time for you?
That's another extremely good question. I always say, and I'll probably shift now more to restaurant life because that's really where my heart is and what I've done the longest now, is one of the non-sexy things about restaurants is consistency, right? You can go into a restaurant one time and have the hostess is nice, the server is great, the food is amazing. You hype it up to your friends, you come back a month later and you have the exact opposite experience and you feel silly in front of your friends. That's probably one of the most difficult things to do in the restaurant business. And I feel and suspect in any business, right? Just getting up every day, not real, you have your long-term goal, but have your short-term goals in there and just try to monotonously keep marching down that path. Don't give up. For the most part, don't listen to other people. So I would say consistency is a big, big part of just don't quit. And when you hit those, everyone's going to hit the scary speed bumps in their life. That's where the mentors come in handy. You solve the problem, you move on. And what's interesting is you're stronger for it, right? it's not like everything's going to go perfect all the time. It's
Yeah.
those negative experiences that you work your way out of, and you're like, okay, that's now in my tool belt, and your tool belt gets bigger and bigger, and you know how to handle those things.
Yeah. What was like a particular native experience, or maybe like a series of adversarial situations, challenges that you had to overcome with SDCM?
Money.
Yeah.
Like
you mean
I
like
said,
raising capital, or?
yeah, I mean, it's either you either come from some money and you kind of use that to sort of build your company, or you have to go raise capital on the street, which is doable but not easy, right? If I walked over to you and said, "Hey, I've got a restaurant, do you want to invest in?" I would tell you to run away because most restaurants don't work out.
Yeah.
So it's a very humbling and kind of embarrassing, arguably embarrassing situation to have to go out to friends, family, other business people and be like, "Hey, I'm trying to open this restaurant. I'm trying to raise, whatever it is, a couple $100,000, 500 million bucks or more." I guess those in the old days. I would say that is a very humbling experience in and of itself and challenging to get over. But if you can do that, each restaurant that we opened, my percentage of ownership went up and up and up and up. And now I either own all of it or, vast majority, that kind of thing. So I would say that money is one of those big obstacles you got to figure out. Sure.
Enjoying this episode? Subscribe for more content on finding your own path to success. Every subscriber makes a huge difference to the pod, and we're grateful for everyone. And don't forget to throw us a classy like and comment too to let YouTube know that you're a fan of our stuff. Now back to your regularly scheduled podcasting.
Now, you mentioned something earlier about how the fact that most restaurants fail, and that's just statistically true, that most restaurants do end up failing at some point or other. So what do you think is the biggest reason why that is? I mean, is it just lack of like self-belief, determination, or like specific to that industry, is there a reason why most restaurants don't get off the ground?
I'll answer that in two ways. I always say that, you probably have a plumber living 3 doors down from you who's making $1 million a year, and no one knows and no one cares because no one wants to know about plumbing until their pipe breaks.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'm a little jealous about, the millionaire plumber in the sense that like no one's calling them to be like, "Hey, how was plumbing today?"
Sure.
Restaurants are a very high profile thing, right? So they're fun, they're sexy, they're sophisticated. Everyone wants to talk about it. Who's the new general manager? Who's the investor? How much money are you making? It's just very much on people's conscious, and everyone, arguably it's why Vanderpump Rules, right? It's almost a soap opera portion to it. And I think if you get caught up into that soap opera, that'll kind of bring you down. That's one. Two, the consistency thing about just how do you make that burger or that filet mignon the same every single time? That's super, super hard to do. And then I'm going to get into something I call TLC plus S in a minute. That's the subconscious of when you walk into a restaurant and you leave and you're like, "I don't know why I love that place, but I just love it." I'll get into that in a second. But the last one is, I can't tell you how many times I have wealthy friends that come to me and say, "I've made some money in my life. I'm going to open a restaurant." I'm like, don't fucking do it. Don't fucking do it. And they're like, "No, of course I'm going to open a restaurant. My wife is an amazing cook and we have a bunch of friends. How hard can it be?"
Sure.
And what people don't realize is, imagine having your wedding, right? Weddings are usually the one thing that people have where it's, call it a restaurant, call it a nightclub, whatever it is, where they invite all these people and they're controlling the food and the drinks and this and that. And they're like, "My wedding was amazing." Well, sometimes they forget they had a wedding planner. And my argument would be, try to have your wedding 7 days a week. Try to have it, 4 times a month. You know how hard that is? Your friends will come to your first wedding, your second wedding, but your third wedding, the amount of people that want to come are less. So it's, how do you open a restaurant with having the juice, I'll call it, for your friends and family, and then how do you translate that out into the public at large? And that's a whole marketing machine conversation we can get into later.
Sure.
But I think that would be my answer for that.
Sure. In terms of like the early stages, when you're raising capital, when you're presenting the concept of a business to investors, to people who maybe aren't your direct friends or family, but to other people, to get that extra investment, to get that extra capital, like what's like sort of the key, like maybe for somebody who's listening to this who's like an entrepreneur or business owner, like what's sort of the key to overcoming those objections, overcoming those early challenges, and convincing people to buy in?
Right. From a restaurant standpoint, it would be, if a guy came to me with very little restaurant experience but a lot of passion and, "Hey, I'm a good cook," you're running away from that investment. If someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I've been busboy, server, manager, general manager. I've been doing this for 10 years. And now I really want to go on my own and do this restaurant. I have a great concept. I have a great chef." That's really the tipping point, right? This guy has because restaurants seem fun and sexy, but it's only 20% fun and sexy. It's 80%, broken walk-ins and air conditioners not working and that. So that manager, if he's been doing it for 10 or so years, he's coming in with a lot of experience. That's a much more attractive investment. So I would say to anyone, work in the industry as much as you possibly can, or study the shit out of it and be a PhD and just have the knowledge that I think if I were to invest, that would get me off the hump. As passion sounds nice in a pitch deck, but really long-term experience speaks louder than words.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier also, I think the acronym was TLSC.
Oh yeah. Again, showing my age. Beyonce's huge now, but she was originally in TLC.
And I know TLC.
Okay.
I thought you said TLSC.
No, I'm getting there.
Okay.
So then there was another band at that time that was famous, Salt and Pepper. Salt and Pepper's DJ was called Spinderella. And the only reason I come up with it that way is so people memorize it. I always joke, what if Spinderella joined TLC at the time, right? They would have been a super band.
Okay.
And TLC plus S stands for temperature, lighting, comfort, and then sound. If you can get that right, and you can even make remotely good food and drinks, you're halfway there. And the point is, how many times you gone to a restaurant with a wife or a girlfriend and she's in a cute little outfit and she's freezing her fucking ass off. And the manager who's running around in a suit doesn't notice that. He's like, oh, it feels great in here. Yeah. So I tell my managers, if you're not a little too warm, it's too cold in here, right? The temperature needs to be perfect for people or ladies who might have a skirt on or a small top, that kind of thing. So temperature is such a huge thing. Lighting's another one. How many times you sat in a restaurant and literally there's a spotlight on top of your head and you look like friggin' Skeletor, so having that light hit right in the middle of the table, for example. So, and there's a lot more to it, right? I always say you don't ever want to see the source of where the lighting has come from. That's why underlighting is so beautiful, right? You get this glow, but you don't have like shiny type lights in your eyes. So temperature, lighting, and then comfort. Good example is, again, girl in shorts or skirt sits in chair on patio and gets up and has the tic-tac-toe on the back of her legs, right? And she's sitting there uncomfortable. We don't notice that. We usually have jeans on or something like that. So, make custom pads to put in those chairs that are pretty and they can sit on, they're more comfortable. So comfort is huge. And that's men and women, right? Like, how many times have you gone somewhere, you sat in a booth and you're like sitting so straight up, it's so uncomfortable, or there's not enough room down here. So comfort is huge. And then lastly, sound. I've been in some restaurants where I feel like I'm at the Library of Congress and you can hear a pin drop and it's like a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I've been at some restaurants having a conversation like I am with you and I can't fucking hear you.
Yeah.
So trying to nail that sound. And I feel bad because my general managers are worried about sales, cost of labor, cost of this, cost of that. And I'm there as the owner going, hey guys, you got to get all that. And then after that, you need to pay attention to temperature, lighting, comfort, and sound. That's kind of the magic, formula, at least in my world.
That's what you preach.
Yeah.
And from everybody on down to like the servers, the busboys, like you preach that at the level of management and then it trickles down.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So by the way, did you come up with that uniquely, or was that like something you developed like over time with business partners and stuff?
It's funny you asked that. I think I intrinsically knew it. I never really knew how to explain it. And I'm in a business group called YPO. I'm not sure if you're familiar. There's EO, there's YPO. And I had to give a presentation about, what made successful restaurants. And I just sat there and that just kind of poured out of me. And I was trying to think of a way to get them to remember it. And that's where the TLC, I wrote it out. I had the whole speech ready. And like the day before, I was like, wait, TLC plus S. Okay, there we go.
Did you sing any TLC lyrics or?
I'm not doing that for you.
What's your favorite TLC song though? Seriously.
I'm just surprised Beyonce made this new country song. It's so hot right now. But TLC, don't go chasing waterfalls.
It's your waterfalls? Okay. Now, the thing is that we're in 2024. We're sitting here at Firehouse now, but the reality is that COVID was only 4 years ago. 2020, obviously changed the nightlife and restaurant industry quite a bit. So, but in addition to Firehouse, where we're sitting now, you also own the other businesses we talked about, Waverly, Kettner Exchange, what was it? Devil's Dozen, Captain's Quarters, and then the new one is Whaling Bar.
Yeah.
So, in the aftermath of COVID, like not only were you able to maintain the same level of success, it seems like, but you're actually expanding, you're actually growing your businesses, you're opening a new business. How did COVID like affect your specific establishments, and going forward, like how are you able to move successfully beyond that?
Next question.
Next question.
No, I'm just kidding. I'll answer. COVID, I still have PTSD from that. Couple of answers. Going into it, one of the most terrible experiences of my life. And as I said before, I kind of made money in a restaurant, and I would gamble in the next restaurant, So, And those early deals that I would make with investors, which you talked about earlier, I wasn't getting paid till they were paid off, right? So I was playing this very long money game. And I remember I was supposed to get my first big check March of whatever that was.
2020.
Yeah. And what did we close down? Like this, it was a Sunday. I remember I was here at Firehouse.
Yeah, March 11th.
That was our last Sunday open. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I built this friggin' empire. I'm finally going to get paid. And now this, and there was no historical precedent for it, right? So
No.
even go into a mentor, they're like, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that first part, I kind of just went into survival mode and I tried to keep on the staff as much as I could. Then I think we had to, obviously let everyone go because you literally had to be at home. And I think we let go 300 or 400 employees. It was fucking awful. It was like worst day of my life. Kept a very small core, had one restaurant where we did to-go food. I'm driving around San Diego in my Tesla doing delivery food, being like, think of the juxtaposition of this, right? I finally bought my first cool car. I had the X, at the wings. And I'm like driving around to-go food, watching my small empire take a shit.
Yeah. So
that was really bad. I do think that PPP money saved restaurants. I mean, saved a lot of businesses. It was a lot of hard work to get there and get the money. And you're sitting there waiting if it's going to drop in your account or not. And a lot of that had to do with good paperwork. And that'd be another thing I would say. I don't care what business you're in, make sure your team does good paperwork.
Yeah.
So that money really helped. And then, we kind of, like I said, one day at a time, when you could partially come into a restaurant, or you could then walk on the sidewalk, but then not come into the restaurant. We set a bar up on the railing down here on the first level of Firehouse and served to-go drinks out. So we just kept ourselves busy by being as creative as we could. And we learned a lot out of it, but it was a shitty fucking experience.
Yeah. Well,
Did you subscribe yet? If you like our content, it's the easiest way to support the pod. Hit the subscribe button on the bottom right and keep it classy.
I mean, and on that note, like there had to be moments, I'm sure, where you at least thought about like, man, like, am I in the right industry anymore?
Right.
Like questioning like the future and like questioning yourself even. Like, how do you overcome that when there's those moments of self-doubt, adversity? Like what kind of keeps you going in a time where you can't see the future ahead like you thought you could?
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, restaurant industry, I have probably 18 circles of friends, and it's like an onion, right? And as you get to the middle, those are my core friends I went to high school with or just very close with. There's a little bit of that, just being like, oh, fuck, what the fuck am I doing? And they're like, no, Matt, your places are great. Come on, hang in there. And again, back to the mentor thing, kind of going to being like, sucks. My mentor said something to me, David said something to me a long time ago. He goes, do you realize that nuclear power plants have less regulatory bodies than restaurants? Like if you go to open a brand new restaurant, the amount of different permits you have to get and clearances you have to get and fire marshal and vice and ABC. And it's just, people look at it as a fun, easy, sexy business, but it's difficult. You've got a lot of, you're juggling a lot of balls in the air and you can't drop any. And so kind of went off track there. What was the final question on that?
No, yeah, just like sort of like in those moments of adversity, like when everything's kind of going downhill like that, like how you sort of maintained your purpose, your passion.
Just keep showing up. Just keep showing up. There's going to be bad times and you learn from them, and there's going to be good times. And I even think sometimes like when things are going really well, I'm like, I know there's something bad coming around the corner, but I also know there's something good coming around the corner after that. So I just keep showing up.
Now, you talked earlier a little bit about how from the top down, you try to apply a very unique customer satisfaction experience to all of your businesses, that involves like the comfort, involves like the atmosphere. But talk a little bit more about that in terms of like what's unique about the atmosphere and the attention to detail that you guys provide at your businesses for SDCM, and sort of the passion that goes into that. Like what really motivates you to not just treat this as like, we're making money, we're making bank, but also like attention to all the little things that make a customer's experience great? Yeah,
a couple answers to that. One, I learned when I was in that kind of promoter world, which I don't talk about, if you don't have a club full of ladies, you're not going to have a busy club, right? So you, as a promoter, you got really good at taking care, making sure that, women or females were super happy and comfortable and safe. And guys are just going to come, right?
Yeah.
And then when I got into the restaurant nightclub business, name a nightclub owned by a woman. Very few. Name a general manager of a nightclub that's a woman. Very, very few. Mine actually did have a female general manager. And I think it's because the nightclub industry is a very like guy bro industry, right? And that's why a lot of nightclubs fail, because they approach it from a male's perspective and you need to approach it from a female's perspective. So I saw that in that. And then when I transitioned really into restaurants and more fine dining and We have a Michelin Bib Gourmand at Kettner, and we're working on trying to get a star at some point. I approach all my restaurants, whether it's design, food, beverage, from the female perspective as best I can. And I didn't plan it this way, but my entire corporate team, I think, except for maybe one, I think my director of ops is a guy. It's all female. And I really listen to them. What do you guys like? What's going on? What's cool? And we joke with each other. They'll talk about Gwyneth Paltrow and Goop. I'm like, I can't do it. But again, it's approaching a restaurant, design, comfort, all the things I talked about from a female's perspective. And then again, trying to keep, the customer's right 90% of the time. If a customer is being an asshole, then you don't have to, you can leave, you can come back tomorrow, but you got to leave now. So, and that kind of empowers a staff to know that you have their back as well. Yeah.
Do you feel like, again, like sort of back to the other thing, that's sort of the management on top down to, the bottom level, like it just goes all the way through the organization, like this attitude of, let's treat things from the other perspective, from the woman's perspective, like let's look at it from this different way.
If I understand what you're saying, I'm really focused on my senior management, and I'm really focused on my dishwasher. And I, as best I can, before COVID, I knew everyone's name. Post-COVID, we're a little bit bigger, different world. I don't know everyone's name, but I try to. Like last night, I was at Grass Skirt, and I was like cutting through the kitchen to do a little shortcut. And I know there's a Haitian, I cannot think of his name right now. He's a Haitian dishwasher. And I walked by, and I don't speak French. I was like, "Comment ça va?" And he's like, "Oh, blah." Yeah. So I really try to, because I've dishwashed. I know how shitty it is. So I try to be there and empathize with people in those lower positions, and they know that I'm willing to do it. Like I'll unplug a toilet, I'll dishwash if I have to. And I think having that really focus on the top and not really focus on the bottom has worked for me. It's not that you don't focus in the middle, but I think those ironically are two of the most important positions to have.
Leading by example, like doing the dirty work yourself, is that something you just always done, or was there kind of a moment in your life or somebody that like instilled that in you? Like, where does that come from? Because not every manager, not every person in a position of authority does that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's funny. It wasn't until I joined YPO and I'm with these other CEOs and high-level entrepreneurs that I learned about Imposter Syndrome, where they're like, I don't know if I belong here. And I was like, I never even knew that was a thing. Yeah. It's one of those things, like sometimes you don't want to know too much about a subject. But I would go back to what I said earlier. I mean, some of my first jobs were riding my bike to Kobe swap meet and setting up some guy's tent to sell toys. I had just done a lot of manual labor, so I feel comfortable doing it. And frankly, sometimes my assistant Hannah May knows, sometimes I'd rather not be in the marketing meeting. I'd rather be in the warehouse with whoever's there working and organizing. I like getting my feet or my hands in the dirt. And I think having those two as a balance is really good. I tell my corporate team when we're coming up with new concepts or new dishes when we're in our office, you never want to lead like you're in an ivory tower, right? You're like, oh, my shit doesn't stink. I know what I'm doing. Have you talked to the server at, Kettner Exchange recently to see if that kale salad is the best thing on them? You know what I mean? Like you kind of, you get stuck in your little ivory tower. And I think it's important to get out and, be a customer, mingle with your staff and really listen to them.
Now we've talked a little bit about COVID, and obviously, things changed during COVID and things, sort of going back to normal. But I think I've talked to some nightlife owners who tell me that, the industry has changed since COVID, just irreversibly in certain ways. I just wanted to see if you sort of share that take in terms of how, specifically, like you can't speak for everybody, but specifically for yourself or your businesses in San Diego, have you seen the industry change, and like how so?
Yeah, two-part answer. I would say, just to be clear, I really don't, in my mind, I don't do nightlife. We have restaurants that serve high-end food and drinks. Yes, we do have a DJ and a lounge kind of vibe to some of them. So to the actual nightclub, I probably couldn't speak to that as much. What I would say from a restaurant perspective, I don't know why this comes to mind, Sunday brunch, right? You've been here on a Sunday brunch. Sunday brunch kind of pre-COVID, everyone had gone out the night before. They're walking in a little hungover. They're sitting down around 2 o'clock. They're having brunch, having a nice time. And by about 3, 4, 5, it's busy, right? It's busy and DJs are playing, great vibes, still daytime. That 2 o'clock when people would come in and sit down for brunch is now like 4 o'clock. So my point is, I think through COVID, so much transition became work from home. You don't have to go to office anymore. And I'm like, I'll see Firehouse, for example, so busy at, 10:30 on a Sunday night. I'm like, no one has a fucking job. I'm like, where is it? And then I remind myself, everyone.
Guilty as charged. I've been one of those people.
I always say, if you haven't been thrown out of Firehouse, you haven't been trying hard enough. No, but I think the transition from office to homework has just changed when people go out and eat and days and nights they go out and eat. It's a lot different in that perspective, post-COVID than pre.
Hey there, classy viewers. Thanks for listening to our podcast. We're dedicated to providing you with quality content that inspires and brightens your day. But keeping it classy can be expensive. If you enjoy our content, we're asking for your support for the podcast using the donation link in the description below. Donations mean the world to us, and even as little as $5 can make a huge difference in helping us make this podcast a reality. Plus, donors are added to our shortlist to be the first to receive exclusive offers on merch, extra content, and even chances to appear on the pod. Anything you can give would truly be appreciated. Now get back to enjoying the rest of the podcast, and as always, stay classy.
Now, having owned businesses and run businesses in California for as long as you have, I mean, is there anything about sort of the regulatory environment or just owning a business in California as a whole that either has changed in the last several years other than COVID, or that you see changing down the road? Like, I know there's been talk of, for instance, efforts to extend bar hours later. There's been bills introduced in the state assembly and that sort of thing. But just in general, like, are there ways in which you see the nightlife industry and the restaurant industry changing in California from that sort of regulatory state law standpoint?
I mean, if you want this to turn into the most boring podcast ever, I could go down that road. I would say to some degree, no. I think we're kind of back to as normal as we're going to get now, like literally now, than we were pre-COVID. A couple of things. I mean, I would say regulatory, the things I'm going to mention are not COVID related. Like, somebody moved our bike rack 2 inches into a handicap spot and we got sued. I hate having plastic glassware in any of my restaurants. I like to have actual glassware. Girls wear open-toed shoes. You can see where that goes, so you get sued. There's a lot of little landmines you got to keep your eye on. And I would just say, again, without getting boring, that kind of stuff. What I would say that is related to COVID is we would have people walking in all of our restaurants multiple times a day with their resume trying to get a job. And I'd hope we're a fun restaurant group and we're a cool restaurant group. So maybe that contributed, but people just come off the street trying to get jobs. If we did a job fair for a new restaurant, we'd have 200 people show up. It was crazy. Post-COVID, we would put a job fair thing out there. We'd get like a homeless person and like an 80-year-old grandma. It was just like crazy. So it took, since we were fully open, it's been 2 years?
More? About 2 years.
I feel like it's only gotten back to quote normal 6 months ago. Meaning getting staff, getting quality staff finally now is about as close to it was pre-COVID. And trying to struggle with really thin staff was really hard. And in restaurants, people would complain about service, have no idea that we can't get enough people in here to get the service level back up. But I think we're there now.
Yeah. Now, I will add also, like, not to change subjects too much, but there is something very unique about life in Pacific Beach, about this community, about, restaurants and nightlife in Pacific Beach, even compared to the rest of San Diego. Do you feel like the vibe or the atmosphere for these businesses is changing as time goes on? Again, aside from the COVID stuff, like, do you think Pacific Beach is changing in that regard? Or do you think it's kind of staying the same as it ever was?
Yeah, no, I think it's getting better. And one of our, we've got restaurants downtown, Little Italy, here in Pacific Beach, now La Jolla, Cardiff by the Sea. They're all little different micro communities, but Pacific Beach, let's be honest, it's known as a college town, college bar town, kind of like a little rowdy, this and that. And my argument is, for good or for worse, all beach towns eventually get a little more sophisticated, more money comes in, more wealth comes in. So I would say in my time in PB, it really was college town. And I would say now it's half or, maybe 1/3 of that, meaning, and we double down on that, right? So Firehouse does get a little fun and crazy on the weekends, but we put out a good product here. And a lot of the restaurants, and not to diss any of them, if they have a really nice view, they're like, fuck it, fish and chips, So we've tried to come at it and do a better thing. And I feel like we've changed the fabric here we have Firehouse, we have Grass Skirt, which is my same chef as Kettner Exchange. We just opened Captain's Quarters, not sure if you've been there, which is like a pretty sophisticated, nice speakeasy. And when you shut the door, you don't even feel like you're in PB. So I got started from the beginning by saying, look, PB can be better. It's just going to take time. So I've really tried to focus on that in my career.
Yeah. What about some of the other businesses like that? So like Whaling Bar and like sort of the expansion of some of the other existing establishments. Like, let's talk about that for a second.
Sure.
Like what's coming down the pipeline? What's new and exciting? Like what's coming up for you guys that people should stay tuned to?
Well, two things. One, I would say, I've got a son. He was born here, but he was raised in Barcelona. And so I would go to Barcelona a lot. And I'm like I said, I've been here, born and raised in San Diego. It's kind of, I've traveled a little, but that's what I know. I'd go to Barcelona, and just the flavor and the texture and the beauty and design of restaurants and let's just use Barcelona, but a lot of parts of Europe and the world, it just opened my eyes to be like, whoa, we could. So I try to bring a lot of that back. And one of the things I noticed about bigger cities, you know, the New York, the Chicago, LA's, and then some of these Barcelona, Paris, the nightclub was dying, right? Like, who wants to really wait in a line at a nightclub anymore? And the restaurant was growing, right? And I would say Seersucker was one of the first downtown San Diego that was like, hey, this is a sexy, cool restaurant. There's a DJ over there playing cool lounge music. And I had already been, the juices were already flowing with me. They just kind of beat me to it. And that's the route I went after that. So all of our restaurants really ride a fine line, which is tough on Yelp. And Yelp likes restaurants or things that are one thing, a donut shop, a ice cream shop, a this. And our restaurants are really balanced two things, right? High-end service, food, drinks, but that post 9:30, 10 o'clock does kind of slowly transition into this like sexy lounge, C&B scene, meet people, be able to talk, not a nightclub experience, but still that fun vibe. And we try to balance those in all of our restaurants to varying degrees.
Yeah. What about like, so Firehouse, I feel like specifically, since we're sitting at Firehouse here today, like has a reputation, at least in, you know, the people I know, as a place with great house music, great EDM music, that sort of thing. You know, there's a lot of cool DJs that come here, who play here, perform here. So what about like that, like became that like sort of reputation for a place where there's great music like that? And like sort of, where do you see that going?
You know, I always say if the herd's going one way, you kind of want to be going the other way. I mean, that's a broad statement, but you know, if you walk around PB today, you're mostly going to hear just, you know, pop top 100, what's the top hottest songs right now. And I always felt like, and you know, Camino Riviera is a good example down in Little Italy. We play Afro house, that kind of like Tulum, you know, Playa del Carmen, that kind of like very sexy Latin kind of. And I remember thinking going into it with my entertainment director, Jimbo, he's like, Matt, if you're going to build a Tulum bar and try to make a Tulum restaurant and bar and really design it that way, you've got to be legit and authentic to the music you're going to have. And I was like, oh, this is going to be tough. And we did that. And have you been to Camino?
Which one?
Camino Riviera.
Camino Riviera, no.
It's right up the street from Kenner Exchange. Anyway, my point is, it really landed. Like, if you're going to have a brand or a concept, you got to stay authentic to it. And I feel like if, in that example, if you're going to open a Tulum bar and restaurant, you got to play music that you're going to hear down there. And people really seem to respond to authenticity.
Yeah. What's your favorite kind of music, by the way? What do you listen to?
I listen to a lot of deep house. Some people call it new disco. It's kind of house music, but it's not beating you up, just kind of jazzy. I would say like jazzy kind of, but I won't lie, I love my 90s hip hop, so it's a little bit of both.
A little bit of TLC too.
A little bit of TLC.
Just to wrap it up, a couple more questions. One is like, so for jumping around again to Wailing Bar, like what's cool about Wailing Bar? Like how did the idea and inspiration for that come up with, and like where do you see that going? That
was an interesting one. There's really, you know, I would say the La Valencia is either the or one of the two most iconic hotels in San Diego. It's the Pink Hotel right there on Prospect, and beautiful. The place is great. I've had brunch there many times. There was a small restaurant bar there called the Wailing Bar. I think it opened in like 1949, ran for a very long time. The ownership, after a very long time, with their heart in the right place, shut it down, remodeled it, and the remodel just didn't go very well for them. And the public at large in La Jolla was really upset about it. Long story short, the ownership reached out to me. We came up with a concept. I just said, listen, I got to be able to do my own thing here. Just trust me. I'm old enough to have caught the old Wailing Bar at the tail end. And they kind of were real hands off. And I built something there that I felt, I didn't try to rebuild the old Wailing Bar. I tried to rebuild the vibe and the feel of the old Wailing Bar. And then my chef, Brian Redzikowski, came up and is doing really high-end food with a few nods to the past of some of the items that were on the older menu. We brought back the Whaler, so people who know the Wailing Bar will know exactly what I'm talking about. So nod to the past, but still build a sexy, sophisticated, sexy restaurant bar. And we opened, and frankly, I knew that my normal SDCM, clientele were going to love it. I was a little worried about the older wealthy people coming in saying like, you know, where's my booth and where's my glass of Chardonnay? And we hit it out of the park. It seems like so far, you know, knock on wood, we've really hit it with the local constituency there of La Jolla. We hit it with our own crowd. And that kind of bleeds into one thing I'll just mention is if you're opening a solo restaurant, really hard. restaurants have almost turned into lifestyle brands, right? Like
Yeah.
if I open another restaurant, people are, oh, Spencer's opening that, or that's an SDCM restaurant, or, oh, the Kettner people are doing that. You're already halfway down the road, right? They already trust you. I now look back at my old self and I feel bad for people now. They're like good workers, good taste. Opening that first restaurant and saying you're open and just waiting for people to walk in is a very scary feeling after you spend all that money.
Yeah.
So I feel like restaurants are kind of a lifestyle brand now.
Now, I will say this in closing is that I love Firehouse. I love Kettner. I gotta check out Whaling Bar. I also want to check out Captain's Quarters. And then I've been to Waverly once actually, but
Okay.
I want to check out Waverly again. But last thing before we go is final story, nightlife or restaurant industry, funny story. One more.
Oh, geez, I should have
anything?
prepared for this. God, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. This is when I very first became a general manager of a restaurant a million years ago. It was not my restaurant. Let's make that very clear. It was like my first night as general manager. And I was like, I got this. And it was downtown San Diego. It was right there on Fifth Avenue. And I watched a mouse or a rat run in from the outside across the dining room floor and down the stairs to where the actual nightclub was. The restaurant was upstairs. And people saw it. And I was like, what the fuck do I do? Where's that in the manual? Then I was like chasing it, and I ended up buying some dinner and some drinks and like kind of pretended like we caught it. We didn't. And then like two weeks later, I could smell that we did not catch it. And I remember having to get the trash bag and the broom, and I'm a general manager. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? And I'm trying to crawl in this vent. I finally did get it, but
Yeah.
it was just like, again, it's those weird little experiences that you put in your belt.
I just love the juxtaposition between how we opened with the Makeout story and then we ended with the dead rat story.
Yeah, I'm
But
going to get in trouble for that.
That's great. But anyways, yeah, everybody, if you stop by San Diego, check out Whaling Bar, check out Firehouse, check out Kettner and the other SDCM businesses. Thanks so much for doing this, Matt. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, great having you. Thanks,
Yeah,
Steve.
awesome.
Appreciate
Guys,
it.
That's a wrap.
This has been another recorded episode of Stay Classy Podcast with your host, Steve Wire. Thanks so much for tuning in. And as always, you can find all of our content at our website at stayclassypod.com. And thanks to our production sponsor and partner, MaxLux Media. You can find them at maxluxmedia.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Every subscription helps and goes a long way towards ensuring that we can continue to produce content for viewers like yourself. Thanks so much. Stay classy.